Hi, everybody. It's Reverend Laura from Minnesota Valley UU Fellowship, coming to you today from one of our meditation gardens on our grounds. It's a lovely day out here. It's warm and the birds are chirping. You can hear lawnmowers in the distance, kids riding bikes. I thought this was a good place for me to talk to you today about spiritual practice. We're going to spend the next couple of weeks in these videos talking about different spiritual practices and ways that you might engage them and how those practices can bring meaning into our lives. But today I wanted to just give a little spiritual practice 101. I often go to this website, spiritualityandpractice.com. spiritualityandpractice.com. It's got a lot of information about all sorts of spiritual practices on there, and I'll post this below in the comment section so you can look for it yourself. This is what Frederick and Mary Ann Broussard have written about the basics of spiritual practices. They write, spiritual practices have always been at the heart of the world's religions, and they are also key elements of today's less organized spiritual movements. They help us discover our deepest values, addressing our longing to connect with the divine, and they propel us on the journey to wholeness, which are all aspects of spirituality. Spiritual practices are activities you do to deepen your relationship with the sacred and the world around you. Practices help you to connect to God, or whatever it is that you name to describe something more, something beyond yourself, the universe, nature. They enable you to become actively engaged with your inner or true selves, that is the depth of your being. And they expand the breadth of your experiences, encouraging you to relate in a particular way to other people and the whole of life, including animate and inanimate beings, including the past, the present, and the future, I might add. Jewish writer Avram Davis observed, "We are what we practice." If we become angry a lot, then essentially we are practicing anger, and we might get quite good at it. Conversely, if we are practicing being joyful, then a joyful person is what we become. So we practice all kinds of things all the time, but the decision to do spiritual practices is intentional, and that's important. These activities have meaning and purpose, and they influence how we live our lives. So let's talk about what spiritual practice looks like. What shape does it take? Certainly one of the most important aspects of spiritual practice is intention. There are lots of things that could be a spiritual practice, but always behind them is intention. Some things that we normally do in our daily lives can actually become a spiritual practice if we just put that intention behind them. For instance, say you are a cook like I am. Normally I'm just cooking, right? I cook meals, I do a lot of cooking and baking, and I like to do that. Well, if I decide one day that I need a little more centering space, I might actually engage my cooking as a spiritual practice. I put that intention behind it. And when I put that intention behind it, it looks like I'm actually using the cooking itself to connect to that which is beyond me. So I might think about where the food came from. I might have thoughts of gratitude for the earth, for farmers, for truck drivers, for everybody in between where that food originated in me. I might have gratitude for life itself, for the sustaining essence that the food brings into me. I might think about my intentions that I'm putting in the food, how I wish that the people who I share it with are well and healthy. So my cooking then is not just about cooking dinner or fixing lunch. It becomes a spiritual practice, something that's a little more intention. That's the key element of a spiritual practice. Next, sometimes these spiritual practices have a very prescribed discipline. They might be very focused. They might involve a certain way of sitting or moving. We can think about things like writing as a spiritual practice, which we'll hear more about from Jeannie, our office communications manager, later this week. There are also sitting meditations where you're very still, so then the intention is to be still. So you might do that in meditation, or perhaps if you in prayer, there might be sitting stances or poses. Certainly we can see that in like Islamic prayers where there's movements in the prayer. There's also movement in spiritual practice of yoga and Tai Chi. Those all have specific movements that are meant to open you up to breath, to experience to gratitude to being at one with everything that's around you. Now, spiritual practice does not have to be hard. In fact, it really shouldn't be too hard. It rewards presence, not effort. Consider how many of the rituals of world's religions are quite simple: the lighting of a candle, the eating of a piece of bread, bowing. Spiritual practice could be as simple as saying the words thank you before you eat something or before you go to bed. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out prayer. Again, it's the intention that matters and the practice that matters. Now, again, practice. It's a practice. Now, practice doesn't make you perfect. Don't expect to overcome any things that you need to work on or fix all of your problems. Indeed, difficulties are expected in our lives and challenges will still happen. Spiritual practice does not make those things go away, but it does give us a better place, a more whole place, a healthy place to be grounded in so we can face those things. It's kind of something that holds on to us and helps us from feeling like we might blow away, because those times do come and we need something to hold on to. Spiritual practices are those things that would ground us and help us hold on. Now, your practice might change over time too. What you do today that works for you might not work tomorrow, and what works for one person doesn't work for everyone. So one thing that's important is to find something that works for you and do that for as long as that works for you. And then if it doesn't work for you, then maybe find something else. The key is finding something that works. The key is something that resonates with you. The key is being intentional. So keep exploring spiritual practices until you find one that works for you and use it as long as it does. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be sharing some various practices with you. Maybe you'll find one of those that resonates with you. Maybe you have something to share with me that I could share with others. You can certainly comment down below. We all need to help each other out. We all need to share what we know. Sometimes your spiritual practice might even become not something that you actually heard or saw from one person, but kind of a mosaic collage of a couple of different things. So keep looking. Keep finding something that works for you. Keep reaching out. Keep reaching in. Until we meet again, stay safe and be well. Take better care of yourself than you think you need to. Be loving and be loved. And I'll see you again soon.